you all for joining us at the Muse tonight. Normally when you come here, you expect to hear music, you expect to hear a funny show. Today we're taking a step away from that. We're doing something that's very, very different and it's very, very important. Tonight we're setting up a new show called Speaking Out Why I Stand. Every story that you hear in tonight's show is somebody's true story. It's not something written based on a story. It's not something that's passed on to somebody else. It's what happened, it's real, and it's penned with the intention not just to tell you a story, but to tell you who these people are, what they've gone through, and ask you not just to listen to it for a minute, not just to listen to it for the evening, but to take it away from here with you. Take it with you, use it as a call to action, get involved, and get interested, and get impacted by what happens here tonight. We also understand that some of what you're going to hear tonight can be difficult. It can be uncomfortable, and that's all right. If at any point in time during the evening show you feel the need to step out, please feel free to step into the back room. We'll have support staff available to talk to you if you want to talk, or if you just need to take a second, grab a drink, take a seat, think about what's going on, and come back in. Please feel free to do that. Also, after the show, which should run approximately 45 minutes to an hour, we'll take a brief 15-minute intermission. During that time, the back bar area will be open. Please feel free to come back and join us for a drink. Afterwards, if you would like to come back out, we're going to have a brief question and answer period. The founder of CETA, Survivors Empowered Through Art, will be joining us. She'll be here fielding questions as well as some of the actors from the show tonight. Please feel free to enjoy the show, clap at will, and I certainly hope that you all understand that tonight is truly a work of art, and we hope that the people who wrote these stories touch you in the way that they've touched those of us who've been involved with production. Thank you all for being here.
Pinned against the wall, being raped and feeling small, tongue against my chest, you can imagine the rest. Touching, feeling, my eyes rolling to the ceiling, day and night, always full of fright. A puppet I am to him, dangling from limb to limb. My weeks pass by, I have no tears left to cry. I escaped this hate. No more of my soul left to take. I tried to share my story to those that I trust, but they turned a blind eye. I always gave myself for free. It was you who shamed me. I'm starting to grow up a mess. My life is hard to share. Every day that goes by, I feel ashamed and left to die. No respect for myself, no medal for my shelf. All numb, can't feel a thing. The morning doves, they're ready to sing. I'm not dead, I'm just hanging by a thread. The ambulance speeding so fast, all I can see is a movie of my past. Here I go, this life I need to know. Take a seat and watch the show. Dancing for their eyes to see. Please, God, set me free. The years passed on by, still living my past as a lie. I did survive this life. Scars are still there. The people look at me, they stare. I'm sad at times. My past full of all these crimes. I'm smiling at all. Putting my hands out to break my fall. I'd like to share my voice. It's up to me to make that choice. It's up to me to be silenced no more.
my teacher saying, duck and cover, which meant we would duck under our desks, actually laying flat on our bellies with our feet pointing in the direction of the pretend blast. We had to cover our heads with our hands, close our eyes really tight because we didn't want our eyes to get hurt from the glare of the atomic bomb. Like that would help? Well, I was a precocious child. I came from a big family. I had a lot of brothers and sisters. So I knew what was going on. Where we lived, our community, our home, was the home of the United States Air Force National Headquarters for Strategic Air Command. Anyways, it was Offutt Air Force Base. I distinctly remember once during a drill, grabbing my book, sneaking under my desk. And my teacher got so angry. I remember her just lecturing me and saying, "My gosh, you have to take these drills more seriously. This is very serious. The way you act during these drills is going to determine whether you're going to be alive or dead." I just thought, oh, is she ever naive? We were at ground zero. I said, hey, don't worry, we're not going to feel a thing.
Sexual abuse has gone on in the military for as long as I've been living. I'm 64. I was only 12 when I was sexually assaulted by someone in the military. My dad was a sergeant in the Air Force. He served for 20 years. When we were in Germany, my parents often brought single soldiers home for Christmas and other holiday dinners. He was a soldier that had been over before. This time, he came over for dinner and then left. My parents left to go out on a date. I was asleep when I heard a knock on the door. I thought my parents forgot their house key, but it was him. He said my dad told him he could sleep on the couch if he missed the bus back to base.
Ground Zero is defined by the United States Department of Defense and NATO as a point on the surface of the earth, or at, below or above, the center of a national nuclear detonation.
I believed him.
Ground zero for a child victim of sexual abuse plays a major role in the adult that they become. Personal safety and trust are immediately burned to ash.
He raped me in the living room when I brought him a blanket and pillow. I remember finally escaping and crawling towards my parents' bedroom. It was the only room in the house that had doors that locked. I found my parents in bed. I crawled toward the base of the bed, trying not to wake them, but they heard him calling my name. My parents left the room, and then my mother came back to check my underwear. My dad then came back, got dressed, and took him back to base. I was never asked any questions, and I didn't ask any. It was never mentioned again.
My memories of the childhood molestations are fragmented and incomplete. However, the memory of laying in the darkness after the first incident and feeling that great emptiness, it stands out in my mind. It was as if the darkness was all there was, inside and out. It was preferable for me to remain in the darkness because I felt safe. I felt like I could hide. Was this my rite of passage into the adult life? Was that emptiness and that darkness really all there was? And was it the end of my innocence? I really believed it was. And this rite of passage, it came with fear and shame and secrecy rather than pride and a sense of accomplishment that you would get if you had positive guidance by an elder. The mind of a sexually abused child finds a way to deal with that betrayal and inability to comprehend the situations by disassociating from the trauma. Sadly, as the child reaches adulthood, that disassociation leaves the wounded child behind, alone in a world filled with fear, rage, and grief.
It will always be a culture of blame placing, and that being the burden of the person assaulted. I saw and heard many excuses for why men are like this and how women are always at fault. The rape wasn't the only time I was degraded, but you learn to keep your mouth shut. You learn other women would rather believe a man over you. You learn to be subjected to abuse because sexual abuse is tolerated, a lesser evil over friendships, job promotions, or family life. My daughter-in-law served in Iraq in the military motor pool. She was raped one night by 4 soldiers. When she reported, she awoke the next night to the platoon sergeant jacking off over her. They tried to get her declared mentally unstable. Her silence was bought with an honorable discharge and a 100% disability rating with the VA.
Together, raked sand together, talked about life together. His window was across from mine. I think he saw me changing once, maybe more than once. He was getting dishonorably discharged. I didn't think he was a good man. I didn't think he was a bad one either. It had been 2 weeks since I landed in Monterey. I only wanted a cigarette. He knew where to go. I bought the Southern Comfort and bottom shelf gin. He carried it with him to his room. I didn't think anything of it. We raked sand together. We ate lunch together. We watched movies together. We sat on a makeshift bench by the ditch by the installation fence. We drank and smoked and laughed. I taught him Farsi and he taught me Russian.
rushing for hello and goodbye, rushing for this is allowed, rushing for this is not allowed. I think he saw me changing once. He tried to kiss me on the cheek. I told him no, my boyfriend wouldn't like that very much. We smoked some more, we drank some more, we laughed some more. It was 21:30. I had to be in my room by 2200. He said not to worry, I'd be back in time. I insisted and tried to leave. I fell to the ground. He didn't help me up. I only wanted a cigarette. He kissed me on the mouth. I didn't kiss him back. I was immobile, paralyzed, drugged. He kissed me again, and again, and again. I did not kiss him back. I had a boyfriend. All I wanted to do was smoke and drink and laugh. He grabbed me by the ankles, pulled me over the ditch by the army barracks by the installation fence. I could hear the soldiers coming back to their rooms. I was paralyzed. I always thought I would fight. Fed him off with car keys stuffed between my fingers. I looked up at the tree branches. My watch said it was 21:47. That was the last time I prayed to God. There were leaves in my hair, dirt on my arms, something less than a man between my legs. It looked at me with hate in its eyes. We stood sidewalks together. God kicked back and swigged the PBR while I was raped behind the army barracks, over by the ditch by the installation fence. He helped me up. I couldn't stand on my own. How sweet. I vomited by a tree. I was disgusted with myself and with him and God. I wanted to drown in Southern Comfort and bottom shelf gin. He walked me back to my barracks building. How sweet. I made it to my room by 2200. All the girls watched me stumble down the hallway. I was so violently alone, taps wailing on the outside of the window. I left my hat by the bench, by the ditch, by the installation fence. He brought it to me the next morning. How sweet.
I joined the military because when I was a teenager, I was in the Civil Air Patrol Cadet program. I loved the camaraderie, missions, sense of purpose. I thought the Army would be the same. I enlisted and volunteered for the 82nd Airborne. Before I joined, I was part of the ex-gay movement and had never had sex. Rumors started about my sexuality and I freaked out and came out to my chaplain. I began the process of being discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And a guy was assigned to me to lead me through the discharge process. He was gay, and I suspect the officers in my unit knew this. He ended up taking me to a hotel, and I explained to him for hours that I could not do anything because I was a Christian. Not going to go into the details right now of what happened, but after that night, I went crazy. I felt abandoned by God. My behavior became erratic. My first sergeant called me a faggot in formation. Everybody laughed. I started getting really paranoid and went off on a non-commissioned officer
I was stationed aboard the USS Frank Cable. Hadn't been aboard my command very long when my leading petty officer became friendly with me. I assumed he was attempting to ease my transition from a submarine command to a surface command. He took me out one night under the pretense of dinner. He had taken me back aboard Naval Station Guam when the attack occurred. He used physical force to subdue me, and then he raped me. After the attack was reported, a senior member of the command came to visit me in base housing. The commanding officer had ordered me not to proceed with the report to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I didn't know that order was illegal, and I complied. I was sent back to sea aboard that ship about 45 days after the assault, after being cleared to deploy by medical. I did not feel safe aboard. Turns out there's only so many places you can run in 600 feet of ship. I was medically evacuated from that ship back to Guam in 4-point restraints and strapped to a litter because of the PTSD.
I wrote a letter explaining that I felt I was at risk of being killed or assaulted. 2 days later, after writing that letter, Matthew Shepard was attacked. I was a chaplain assistant, and several chaplains made derogatory comments about Matthew Shepard in front of me, knowing that I was being discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. After getting kicked out of the military, I was denied unemployment benefits and was, quote, couch surfing, sometimes sleeping in my car, working as a cab driver, 14 or more hours a day. And then things got real bad.
When the Navy sent me to the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, that's when the hard retaliation began. The psychiatrist assigned to treat me there informed me that I was malingering because I was lying about the rape. He diagnosed me with a personality disorder and discharged me approximately 1 year after the assault. I received a general discharge which stripped me of my education benefits. I guess my personality could not adjust to being raped. To this day, I have not been able to get the Navy to even recognize that the assault occurred. My rapist is receiving my retirement check, and I am tired of being a victim.
Being kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and experiencing military sexual trauma made me realize that I will never be accepted in this country, no matter what sacrifice I made. I have been celibate now for over 10 years and identify as a politically progressive, celibate for life, gay Christian.
My current relationship is based strictly on how much effort he puts forth. I deserve to be left behind, but I haven't been. Till I met my life partner, my life was very bleak. I attempted suicide after the rape more times than I care to mention. But I survived, and I became the first male survivor to speak in front of Congress on the issue of military sexual trauma.
My unit and I had been deployed in Iraq for about 10 months when I was sexually assaulted by my squad leader and 3 others. It was unusual for the squad leader to call a meeting late at night. He did this so my unit would know what to expect from missions. He held meetings in his personal quarters. It was a couple of nights before Christmas of 2004. After the meeting, half of the squad left, but I was asked to stay. One of the assailants had received some beer in the mail as a Christmas gift. Consuming alcohol was against the general orders, but it was common for those in my unit. squad leader gave me an open can of beer and told me to drink it. I trusted him, so I did. It took one, only one, to debilitate me. I found myself lying on my back. I could hear and see what was going on, but could not move. I was frightened, confused, and in shock. I don't remember how my clothes came off, but before I realized, I was completely nude and surrounded. I lost consciousness. When I came back to consciousness, I had my clothes back on, except my bra. I was sick to my stomach and dizzy, but I managed to walk back to my quarters. I cried and cried and cried. For the first time, I felt suicidal. I even planned, but a last-minute letter from my mom saved me. A few days later, a platoon sergeant approached me. He heard what had happened and asked if it was consensual. Consensual? I was too afraid to say no, so I told him it was. I said I felt bad about it and wanted to talk to a chaplain, but I was advised not to because I would be punished for drinking. I started receiving sexual taunts from other soldiers, and it continued after I returned home. About a year after I came home, I was told that I would have to face disciplinary actions for indecent sexual acts. I was forced to ride in the car with my squad leader and one of my rapists. I had to stand in front of the lieutenant and explain my actions. I was the only female at this Article 15 hearing. I was told I was an embarrassment to the Army and all the females who came before me. I received an Article 15, but before leaving the lieutenant's office, I was told as long as I stay out of trouble, he would remove the charge from my record. He made a copy of the charges, which was the indecent sexual acts and consumption of alcohol. He very poorly blacked out my name, leaving it still legible, and put it on the bulletin board for the whole unit to see. I completed my service and left.
I lost my life to fear. Fear in the middle of the night. Fear in the broad daylight. Fear of what could happen. Fear of what did happen. Fear insinuating my every day. Fear controlling what I say. Fear governing me when I sleep. Fear dividing me as I weep. Fear that puts my sanity at stake. Fear that prays for me to break. Fear that strikes me with perplexity. Fear with a recipe for complexity. Fear that deprived me of exhilaration. Fear that admitted me to frustration. Fear that is prevailing in my mind. Fear that manipulates humankind. Fear that still holds my life today.
I'm the girl that was raised like a boy. I've always done everything the boys do. It's one of the reasons the military appealed to me. I felt that if I had the ability to fight, I had the duty to fight. And being a girl didn't make me exempt from that duty. I've always held soldiers to a high standard and expect they be the best part of our country. I spent years trying to live up to this. I went through a reserve office training corps in the most competitive year due to downsizing. Only a handful of cadets remained by the time we hit our senior year. That's when everything changed for me. I was sexually assaulted. Twice. I handled it the only way that made sense to me at the time. I pretended it didn't bother me, and I didn't talk about it. I caved a few months later and reported to the police. Despite a desperate fight and trying to remain hopeful, I am the rule and not the exception. Absolutely nothing was done for me. My university gave me the runaround and put me through a nightmare of an investigation. The district attorney told me there wasn't enough evidence, and my attacker got nothing from my extended trauma. I started active duty in just 2 weeks. I'm going to a base that has a problem with sexual assault, and a military that has major problems left. My excitement, honor, and pride in starting soon is filled with fear. Instead of thinking about how I can be the best soldier I can be, I'm questioning everything. Can I wear makeup in uniform? Can I tell people where I live? How am I supposed to be friends with men again? What scares me most is that he could easily do this again. He's part of the problem we already have, and there is nothing more I can do to stop that.
It is a fear of the unknown and unexpected. The loss of sleep and days without rest. Fractured friendships and relationships. Marriages laid to rest. It is the disconnection from reality and those whom we love. It is the worry, the anxiety, the shame and overwhelming fear, the confusion, the forgotten and thoughts of becoming, the self-medication and addiction, the self-hurt and the blame. It is the anger and the outbursts we deliver, the unanswered prayers and unreliable treatments, the medications, the broken promises and side effects, the tears fallen and dreams destroyed. It is the sounds, smells, visions, and feelings that taunt sleep. It is the blackouts and time lost. The battle to achieve independence and self-sufficiency. It is the fight to remember and the fight to forget. As I lay awake, I hear the sounds of him coming up the stairs. I try to move, but I can't. My heart's beating so fast I can hardly stand it. Again, I try to move, but the fear has me paralyzed, frozen to the bed. I look over to my husband, but he is fast asleep. I try to wake him, but I can't. I can't rouse him out of his slumber. Then I heard the intruder coming into the bedroom. I try to pretend I'm asleep so he can't hurt me. I smell the scent. I smell the scent of him, some kind of cheap aftershave. It sickens my stomach. He moves over slowly. I can hear him, and I feel the bed move as he brushes up against it. I open my eyes and I see the knife. It's long, it's a thick hunting knife, and the blade reflects against the half moon reflected in the window. I start to shake as he comes even closer. The face is familiar, I've seen it before. His dark, brown, greasy hair is parted to the side, over to the left, just like I remember. His dark, black frames, glasses, crooked with a piece of tape over the left side, like I remember. He leans down and he puts the knife to my throat. And as the cold blade presses against my throat, I can't breathe. He climbs on top of me. Then I sit up in bed, screaming! Once again, another nightmare of a long time ago. As I review the dream in my mind, thoughts go back to the days that put that nightmare in my head.
I arrived at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in June of 1978. What a naive girl I was, out to save the world by joining the Army. I broke my daddy's heart, and he never forgave me for joining. He told me so many years ago.
I'll never forgive you for joining that damn army.
Pretty easy to see why as I look back over things now. Having a family whose house was so full of love, I wonder now why I wanted to leave them so badly. Being from a farm, my family didn't have the resources to send me to college. My older sister went to college, but she worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I didn't want to have to go through what she did to get a degree, even though I wanted one badly. So like so many other Americans, I listened to the commercials promising adventure and going to college and getting it paid for. The whole glamorized package with condos and travel and education. It seemed like such a good idea at the time. I was a Logan private at basic training when my group occurred. The senior listed individual was a decorated Vietnam vet. I'm not sure what I felt first, the blood and the knife cut, or the penetration. Both hurt considerably. I took a long shower trying to wash him off of me, and I cried the whole time. I washed the cut and tried to tape it up the best I could. After my rape, my commanding officer called me into his office. He spoke of the rape, and then he demanded sexual favors. I was a private. I had no one to turn to, no one. When I went to shower off the filth, I found a girl in the bathroom. She was holding a broken piece of window in her hand. She was contemplating suicide.
The receptionist was very cold and uncaring, a civil servant who had worked too long to be fired and not enough to retire. I was required to do several tests, all of which seemed quite silly to me. I mean, perhaps they could know who I am and what I've been through by the type of adjectives I selected. I should have studied for this. Two hours later, I finally talked to a psychiatrist. He was medium height, slender, gray hair, what he had left of it. A smooth face with a mole beneath his left eye. That must have drove his wife mad, having to look at that every night. Question after question. I found that I was becoming very sarcastic with my answers. I don't know why I'm not usually a sarcastic person at all, but I know I was starting to take offense to his insinuations. He asked questions about the rape.
What were you wearing?
Well,
I was wearing fatigues, of course.
Did you have makeup on?
Well, no. We were not allowed to wear makeup.
Did you ever wear shorts in front of the drill sergeant?
We were not issued shorts. We couldn't even wear civilian clothes.
Where and when did it happen? How can you be sure it did happen? Why didn't you report the rape? How long did the rape last? Did you enjoy it? Did you climax? Were you tied down? Did you remove your clothes, or did he?
On and on and on. I cried through part of the questions. This really frustrated the doctor. He handed me some tissues that were rougher than tree bark and said that I should just regain my composure. After about 2 hours of questioning, the doctor told me that he would complete his report and I would hear from the Veterans Administration in a few weeks. He walked out the door and left me sitting there, once again, feeling raped and wounded. I finally got up and walked out the door. When I got to the car, I cried for 15 minutes. Then, I wiped off my face and went home to my children and pretended that nothing had happened. Well, the day finally arrived when I received my answer from the VA. So I opened the official-looking letter and I skipped the details and I skimmed the pages right to the notice of the award. I had been awarded 10% disability. But the word rape was nowhere in this letter, nowhere to be found. The diagnosis was neuroses. They described my symptoms and labeled me with neuroses.
My name is Sherry Kurtz. I'm 48 years old now. I was gang raped in my barracks in K-Town, Germany in 1984. I reported my rape and felt like I was being raped again through the justice system. My case never made it to court. I was harassed daily by the rapist and many others. I was constantly told this would stop if I chose to leave the service. I was pregnant from my rape and had to pay for my own abortion while they had a fellow soldier drive me to a German doctor. Approximately 11 months after begging and waiting for my case to go to trial, I decided I would die if I stayed. And I signed paperwork to be released on an unsatisfactory and general release. After the charges were dropped, I was told 2 of the men had taken polygraphs at the time and had flunked and could have been facing 30 years in jail. In my heart, I know that was only if my case ever got to court. I know I probably wouldn't have survived another year of waiting for them to decide to move it along. My clothes from the rape were released to me at a white elephant party in a clear plastic bag. I promptly walked to the trash and threw them away. The after effects were many attempted suicides and mental lockups. Actions were clear I had a death wish, and I crashed my car more than once during a flashback. My rearing of my child has been affected in so many ways. One being total fear for her safety. Even to this day, at her being 20, I still feel fear for her. I tried to tell my story numerous times, but I was either too emotionally and physically drained, or no one wanted to believe it. I'm doing better today, but I always feel I can still jump off that ledge one day. I feel my community needs to know the truth of what happens all too often, and we all need to step up to support all of the troops.
She joined the police me. I served the Corps in the 80s. I was so proud of her. 2 years after joining, she was discharged. That's all I knew. I picked her up at the bus stop. I was so very happy that she was home and she was safe. I didn't know she was brutally beat and raped just 4 months prior. She lasted 5 days. 5 days. She drank herself to death 5 days after being discharged. She was on Zoloft, given to her by the Corps. On her prescription bottle, it says mandatory refill. She was forced to take antidepressants for a rape the Corps said didn't happen. The outrage, the horror. The thug that did it, he got non-judicial punishment. She got death, and he got non-judicial punishment. It has been 5 years. On February 28th, I spent hours, days, even years trying to get answers to why this asshole still serves. He got away with it. The military prosecutor actually smirked at me and said, "What are you going to do about it?" Nothing has changed. Nothing. It has destroyed our family. We lost everything. We lost Carrie. We just found out that after years of fighting, the Navy will not change her bad discharge conduct to honorable. Her rapist was married, and she was charged with adultery. Adultery for being raped by a married man. They decided not to punish him, but to punish her. Punish her for reporting. Punish her for stirring up trouble. She was my daughter. More like my twin. My mini-me. When she died, so did most of me. I'm only hanging on to help others, to try to stop this epidemic of assaults and cover-ups. If not for that, I would leave too.
Dear Laura, it's Scotty Mac, as you used to call me. I hope everything has been well with you. I last saw you in 1987. You were getting ready to leave the military and go back to school to get your nursing degree. I have thought of you often and remembered how you stood by me when I lost my best friend to suicide. You were a true friend, and I thank you. You were facing your own crisis at the time, yet you chose to help me. The sexual assault happened months before I met you, and I feel guilty for not having been there for you. Nobody ever said anything bad about you to me personally, but I never went out of my way to check them when they would say something not directed towards me. Even though they were not talking to me directly, I still should have done something. It may have saved a few slurs that you heard in passing if they had just thought that I would get involved. I have regretted not being as good a friend to you as you were to me. You didn't know me at all, yet you were there when no one else was. I'm sorry, I was so wrapped up in myself that I wasn't the person that you were, the person that you needed. I do not want to make the same mistake twice. You were the greatest girl a guy could ask to have in his life, and I couldn't see that. I hope this letter finds you in good health with a happy life. I now realize that the worst thing that I could have done was remain silent when I should have been speaking out. Even if I could have shown just one young man that taking what you want because you're bigger and stronger does not make you a man, maybe I could have made a difference. Well, Laura, I'm going to do whatever I can to spread the word about sexual assault. I want to be the kind of man that you would be proud to call your friend. Sincerely, Scotty Mack, Scott H. Brown.
I look in the mirror. Who do I see? A ghost of a girl I used to be. Dreams and goals wanted to become stolen and destroyed at the hands of some. Out of the ash, as a phoenix, I rise. Don't quit. Keep fighting are my battle cries. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here. Today, I'll be strong. I must make that clear. Demons of the past can haunt me today, but I will not let them stand in my way. For each day I survive is a day they don't win. I'll no longer pay for their horrible sin. So I look in the mirror. Who do I see? Someone rebuilding a stronger me.
I joined the Army in 1975. I was 19 years old with a 2-year-old daughter. I had no high school diploma. I got my GED just so I could enter the service. My dream was to become a nurse. If the Army could help me get that, I was willing to do whatever it took. If it took a few years of work, I was willing to do that. I applied for a medic job, but was told that there would be months of waiting. I didn't want to wait, so I accepted a job in the supplies. One day, I was asked to stand in front of the whole company as an example of how you should shine your boots. I was so proud that I had learned to get along and do it the Army way. My first permanent duty station was at Fort Carson, Colorado. It was all volunteers, no draft people, so that sounded promising. I was raped 30 days after I arrived. It was 15 feet from my office in a building where hundreds of people worked and lived, in a place I was supposed to be safe, where people had your back. We were a team. That was when 3 people, 3 men, conspired to lock me in a room until the leader of the 3 got what he wanted. The man, who I didn't know other than he worked in a supply room down the hall, called me out of my office with a simple, "Come here." I took a couple steps and then felt 2 men pushing me into a nearly vacant supply room. I heard the click of the lock on the outside of the metal door and said, "Hey, I'm cut out. I can't leave the hall. I'm the only one in supply." As the words left my mouth, I could hear him saying,
"You're not getting out here until I get what I want."
Before I realized, my pants were falling down to the floor, and I was on my back on a pile of old tents. There, in that room, my innocence was taken from me. All the hopes of a future lost when he told me,
"No one will believe you. I'm a sergeant, and you're a private."
I don't know how long I was there. The next thing I remember is running to the door, hearing it being unlocked. As soon as I saw outside, I headed straight for my desk. I was trying to work, but I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't stop crying. I remember the military police came, took me to the hospital. The rape kit came out. I was given a chance to say no to the exam. I was so angry by that point. I said, "Yes, get it over with." Clothing went in a bag, and my underpants went in a bag. And there I was. No clothes, no friends, no legal counsel. The next thing was to go to Criminal Investigation Division. It seemed like hours and hours of questions, crying. It seemed like I was on trial. I hand wrote a complaint, no help from anyone, and the CID officers telling me to hurry up. I went to Judge Advocate General and was told, since I had a child when I was 17 and was sexually acted recently, since I wasn't a virgin and not a dyke, they didn't think they could prove rape. Back at the company level, I spoke to everyone, all the men in charge. My commander, first sergeant, his commander, first sergeant. I signed something, and in the end, he was punished with the max you could get for Article 15. He was reduced in rank to E1, all pay taken away, and confined to the barracks for 6 months. The same barrack where I worked. The harassment was almost worse than the rape. Even being transferred didn't stop the rude and crude sexual remarks, and when I went to counseling, there was no comfort there. In May 1976, I was asked by the CID to come back for a follow-up interview. When I arrived, they told me I was going to be charged with conduct or behavior unbecoming. I would be put out of the military with a bad conduct discharge. The only way I could avoid that was to report to the CID about any communications equipment or supplies that were going missing. I went back to my company commander, told him my whole story. I was discharged that week. You know, I was lucky force had made it possible to leave the military with few questions and quickly. Being a single parent had saved me from a very uncertain future. I might have been one of those who took a ride in a Jeep and had it flip over and kill me. I might have been one of those that suicide was the way out. I might have been someone who lashed out and hurt someone. I was lucky. I had good reason to stay alive and fight. My daughter saved me from an uncertain future. I was lucky. I became a nurse. Got to see my first grandchild be born. I am still here. And I will not be quiet anymore about the cancer of sexual assault in our armed services. Again today, 70 people will start down the path that I'm on. They may not be as lucky as I was.
Even fellow veterans can be cruel. Whether they are of an old tired belief that women are somehow inferior to the service, or a belief that women or men deserved their assaults, from being downright dismissive of your service to skepticism of the perceived and assumed motivations for seeking acknowledgement of your pain. Yes, the pain that victims face in the military from assaults was only the tip of the psychological health iceberg. And from there it snowballs down the chain of command. You can still hear whispers. Can you see the faces of those who one day stood proudly beside you, only the next to just shun you, as their opinion was reshaped by rumor and slander and lies? I remember thinking how being removed from this whole environment slowly but surely became something to hope for, even if it was to mean that you were going to be forced into a removal from this. At least you won't have to deal with this. But it doesn't work that way, does it? It doesn't get better. For some it becomes silent shame, and for others it's all-consuming anger, and for a few, way too many, it becomes the motivation to end your life. Or maybe you find some modicum of strength to actually seek some help. You approach a clergyman, a therapist, a family member, or the VA's administration. And for your sake, I hope that you choose any or all of the former before you choose the administration. And you're going to get some help. Sure, you're going to get a lot of therapy. And you're going to feel like, well, maybe I can trust the VA, that they're unlike my service in the military. And that's what they're going to tell you. You're going to hear that they're here to help, not judge you. But then you heard a lot of things in the military, didn't you? And if you dare seek any kind of compensation, this is just, the experience is going to be more re-traumatizing. Compensation, like there is any. And once you begin the claims process, well, every little detail of your life becomes something that they are going to be used as fair game. The therapy is going to be gleaned for any kind of information that can be used in partiality or out of context or in misdirection, so that the VA is going to it's going to be like election year propaganda.
Did your father and mother divorce when you were young? Did a relative die? Did you go through a period of teenage rebellion and come close to being labeled a delinquent before you wised up and joined to make something of yourself? Was a parent abusive at times? An alcoholic? Have a diagnosis of their own psychological issue? Has the symptoms of your resulting PTSD, major depression, identity disorder, gender dysphoria, dissociative disorder, cause problems since? Did you attempt suicide in a frantic effort to escape your pain? Have you lashed out because of your pain? Have you experienced troubled personal relationships since? Do you resort to self-medicating?
All of these tidbits of history and others are going to become fair game in an effort for the VA to dismiss liability. And it's a very real possibility that if you are a particularly cruel chain of command, that you'll have that nifty and convenient borderline personality discharge. That in and of itself is going to redouble the VA's effort to avoid its liability. Even if you don't have a psychological discharge, don't be surprised when a nice little pre-existing condition conveniently appears after the VA pays for your evaluation. You're going to feel like a victim all over again. Symptoms are going to start to become worse, all-consuming. You're going to be forced into a situation of addressing and disputing all the irrelevant facts that the VA uses to drag this process out, and denial after denial after denial. We will frantically search for pieces of paper, evidence, service records, evaluation papers, psychological exams, letters of recommendation, school evaluations of some sort, buddy statements, all in an attempt to dispute their convenient little 40 to 50-minute diagnosis by people that they pay for. And you see that they don't even acknowledge all the evidence, or worse, they twist it selectively for their own gain. You're going to be stunned. You're going to feel hopeless all over again as the snowball becomes the iceberg. And then the whispers and rumors begin anew. You'll be called a liar, a malcontent, a malingerer, an attention whore, and that you're a disgrace to more other deserving veterans. There's something they're going to think that you have some twisted sense of entitlement, where they would like to believe that there's none at all. Not even for a simple apology. You're going to see people, civilians, that didn't even bother to serve. And they have no idea what they're talking about. Even fellow veterans on forums expressing how you, being in the military, is the problem. And you can have people who sometimes were even there supposedly to help you, trying to tell you that, well, maybe you should drop your claim and move on with your life for your own mental well-being. Well, don't! Don't you dare fight till you can fight no longer, and then fight some more. Fight for yourself, fight for those that follow after you, because this is not going to go away if you stop. And I promise you that you're going to be overwhelmed by all of this again and again if you don't do something now. But that's exactly what they want you to do. But whether you drop your claim, whether you lash out, whether you take your own life, they're going to go on. And they're going to do so believing that what they do is acceptable and effective. Your service was no less than anyone else's. And you're stronger than an individual than you know that you are. You're a fighter, a soldier, a marine, an airman, a sailor. You fought in the greatest fighting force in the world. Make them remember that! Fighting the uphill battle that they lay out before you is not a poor reflection upon you. It's a poor reflection upon them.
Anyone?